Oh shit.
Actually the developer fault. For instance, I was using Allcast app and it worked fine on my Mac, but when I tried it on my Windows computer, it didn't get detected. I found many people who has rated this application low has the same problem. And after checking the description of the app, I saw it was because of Windows Firewall. So once I disable the Windows Firewall, or you can also add an exception, the app works just fine. Still, it's not a prettiest solution since there is a watermark and ads. So for any other reason, if you want to use a screen mirroring application, then I will recommend Screen Stream Mirroring over Allcast. It works with the browser, so at least you don't have to configure your firewall settings. Or even use the app that I have suggested in my previous video, that is A Power Mirror, which when used with the USB, you can also control your Android device from your computer. But still, all these applications have ads, limited free version and high price. And after getting frustrated from all the available options, I finally found a simple solution. It's AirDroid. Yes, you can use AirDroid to cast your Android screen on your computer. Let me show you how. So head over to Google Play on your Android smartphone and open the AirDroid app. Now this part is important and also awesome. So if you're new to AirDroid, then you can either create a new account or skip it. So if you have both your computer and Android under the same Wi-Fi network, like if you're sitting in your home and want to share some pictures with your family on your computer, then you can use Wi-Fi option. No need to
Hell
sign
no.
in. So once you enter the app, you will see an IP address in the AirDroid app. Now type that in your computer browser. It doesn't matter if it's a Windows, Mac, Linux or even a Chromebook. As long as it is a web browser, you're good to go. And then press enter and confirm the login on your phone. And there we go. Now the next part is quite unobvious. There is no direct screencasting option here, which I will ask the developer after making this video. But anyways, from now on you will need to tap on this screenshot icon and it will send a confirmation on your Android. Press OK and there you have it.
You
Your
know what? I
entire
should have
Android screen
done
on your
a
computer. And the best part is
PC.
it works flawlessly all the time.
Just a
It's
PC
free
screen.
and there are no ads popping
This is
around.
the only
Also,
PC
there is
screen.
a watermark, but it's
I
in
don't
the
have my
side of the
camera
screen
on right
and
now,
not
but
on the screen.
just testing a couple
Now
of
let's
things real
consider
quick.
another case. Say you want
Let's
to
see.
give a quick presentation for a conference and there is no Wi-Fi connection. Well then you will have to create a new AirDroid account and then turn on your mobile data. Now open up your computer web browser and this time type in web.airdroid.com and then log into the same AirDroid account and that's it. The latency will depend on your internet connection but shouldn't be a problem on 4G or higher. Overall, AirDroid is the only app that can do all this awesome stuff for free and yet no one is talking about it. Well, this is all for now. It's quite funny to see how companies are selling mediocre apps for high prices when they know there is a better solution that is doing it for free. One word, marketing. And this is not the first time it's happening. If you check out my other videos on simple way to do things, then you will see this pattern keeps on repeating. So if you're a blogger or a YouTuber watching this video, then please make sure you do your research right. Because when you don't, people end up spending money and time when they don't have to. And it's your job to guide them. So that's pretty much it. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I may not be able to reply to each comment, but I do read every one of them. Also, if you like my research, then go ahead and smash the like button. That really helps. And subscribe to this channel if you want to see more awesome stuff. So that's it for now. This is
Oh fuck this fucking map. God damn. No fucking earth maps. I'm still gonna try to make it work though.
Kill confirmed.
Fuck.
No prisoners. Shoot to kill.
Everybody.
By this mistake of yours, you will divert attention from me.
Enemy personal radar in the air.
My co-workers, of whom there are millions, will forget about me and hate me for uncovering my methods.
Never mind about me. Tell me all about this second best trick of yours with which you induce people to drift with you to hell.
My second best trick is not second at all. It is first. It is first because without it, I never could gain control of the minds of the youths. Parents, school teachers, religious instructors, and many other adults unknowingly serve my purpose by helping me to destroy in children the habit of thinking for themselves. They go about their work and never suspecting what they are doing to the minds of children or the real cause of the children's mistakes.
Have you ever heard a parent finish a child's sentence? or seen a parent complete a child's homework. Remember those science fairs at school where it was obvious the kids had a lot of outside help with their science projects? Mom and dad may have helped a little too much, but deep down they know that their child appreciates the help and recognizes what great parents they are, right? Actually, the child may be thinking, Mom and Dad don't think I can do it on my own, so why bother? Eventually, this parental help will destroy the child's self-confidence. By allowing children to be truly in charge, parents will help their kids develop the habit of thinking for themselves.
I can hardly believe you, Your Majesty. I've always believed that children's best friends were those closest to them, their parents, their school teachers, and their religious instructors. Where would children go for dependable guidance if not to those who have charge of them?
That is where my cleverness comes in. There is the exact explanation of how I control 98% of the people of the world. I picture them children in their youth, before they come into possession of their own minds, by using those who are in charge of them. I especially need the help of those who give children their religious instruction, because it is here that I break down independent thought and start people on the habit of thinking, by confusing their minds with unprovable ideas concerning a world of which they know nothing. It is here also that I plant in the minds of children the greatest of all fears, the fear of hell.
I understand that it is easy for you to frighten children with threats of hell, but how do you continue to make them fear you and your hell after they grow up and learn to think for themselves?
Children grow up, but they do not always learn to think for themselves. Once I capture the mind of a child through fear, I weaken that child's ability to reason and to think for himself, and that weakness goes with the child all through life.
Is that not taking unfair advantage of a human being by contaminating his mind before he comes into full possession of it?
Everything is fair that I can use to further my ends. I have no foolish limitations of right and wrong. Might is right. I use every known human weakness to gain and keep control of the human mind.
I understand your devilish nature. Now, let us get back to further discussion of your methods of inducing people to drift to hell here on Earth. From your confession, I see you take charge of children while their minds are young and pliable. Tell me more of how you use parents, teachers, and religious leaders to ensnare people into drifting.
One of my favorite tricks is to coordinate the efforts of parents and religious instructors, so they work together in helping me to destroy the children's power to think for themselves. I use many religious instructors to undermine the courage and power of independent thought of children by teaching them to fear me. But I use parents to aid the religious leaders in this great work of mine.
How do parents help religious leaders destroy their children's power to think for themselves? I never heard of such a monstrosity.
I accomplish this through a very clever trick. I cause the parents to teach their children to believe as the parents do in connection with religion, politics, marriage, and other important subjects. In this way, when I gain control of the mind of a person, I can easily perpetuate the control by causing that person to be fastened upon the minds of his offspring.
In what other ways do you use parents to convert children into drifters?
I cause children to become drifters by following the example of their parents, most of whom I have already taken over and bound eternally to my cause. In some parts of the world, I gain mastery over children's minds and subdue their willpower in exactly the same way that men break and subdue animals of lower intelligence. It makes no difference to me how a child's will is subdued, as long as it fears something. I will enter its mind through that fear and limit the child's power to think independently.
The devil will enter a child's mind through fear and then limit the child's power to think independently. I can remember the many religious leaders I have known in the past and instantly divide them between fear-based instructors and faith-based instructors. In fact, I still get a chill from reliving the fire and brimstone of some of the fear-based sermons I heard as a child. In contrast, I remember the uplifted feeling of hope and courage from the faith-based sermons. Hill's words of wisdom certainly ring true for me. Does fear then paralyze independent thought?
It seems that you go out of your way to keep people from thinking.
Yes, accurate thought is death to me. I cannot exist in the minds of those who think accurately. I do not mind people thinking, as long as they think in terms of fear, discouragement, hopelessness, and destruction. When they begin to think in constructive terms of courage, hope, and definiteness of purpose, they immediately become allies of my opposition. They're lost.
I'm beginning to understand how you gain control of the minds of children through the help of their parents and religious instructors. But I do not see how the school teachers help you in this damnable work.
School teachers help me gain control of the minds of children, not so much by what they teach the children, as because of what they do not teach them. The entire public school system is so administered that it helps my cause by teaching children almost everything except how to use their own minds and think independently. I live in fear that someday some courageous person will reverse the present system of school teaching and deal my cause a death blow by allowing the students, using those who now serve as teachers only as guides to help the children establish ways and means of developing their own minds from within. When that time comes, the school teachers will no longer belong to my side.
Here is the essence of Hill's critique of public education, written in 1938. Do you agree with him? Think of young children during kindergarten and first grade. They are enthusiastic and volunteer for everything, raising their hands and excited to learn. Now fast forward 10 years. And think about those same children as high school students, the ones sitting in the back of the class, never making eye contact with adults, and absolutely never volunteering or asking a question. They have disengaged from the learning process. What happened to these children? 10 years of schooling. They perceived that to make an error would subject them to ridicule and scorn. So they cease to participate in order to protect themselves. They are taught that the solutions to all problems and conflicts lie not in their own hands and minds, but in the hands and mind of the teacher, the representative of the authorities. To act independently in the face of conflict brings swift review and reprisal from the teacher. The children are thus discouraged from independent thought and indoctrinated with the concept that they are incapable of resolving their own problems. While there are many excellent teachers, Hill's critique seems validated by the state of education today. If you agree with Hill, what do you think we can do about it? One thing we should do is seek out those teachers in schools who encourage independent thought in their students and applaud them for their courage.
I was under the impression that the purpose of all schooling was to help children to think.
That may be the purpose of schooling, but the system in most of the schools of the world does not carry out the purpose. School children are taught not to develop and use their own minds, but to adopt and use the thoughts of others. This sort of schooling destroys the capacity for independent thought, except in a few rare cases where the children rely so definitely upon their own willpower that they refuse to allow others to do their thinking. Accurate thought is the business of my opposition, not mine.
What relationship, if any, has your opposition with the homes, the churches, and the schools? Your reply to this question should be interesting.
Here is where I make use of some more of my clever tricks. I cause it to appear that everything done by the parents, the school teachers, and the religious instructors is being done by my opposition. This diverts attention from me, while I manipulate the minds of the young. When religious instructors try to teach children the virtues of my opposition, they generally do so by frightening them with my name. That is all I ask of them. I kindle the flame of fear into proportions which destroy the child's power to think accurately. In the public schools, the teachers further my cause by keeping the children so busy cramming non-essential information into their minds, they have no opportunity to think accurately or to analyze correctly the things their instructors teach them.
Do you claim for your cause all those who are bound by the habit of drifting?
No. Drifting is only one of my tricks through which I take over the power of independent thought. Before a drifter becomes my permanent property, I must lead him on and ensnare him with another trick. I will tell you about this other trick after I finish describing my methods of converting people into drifters.
Do you mean you have a method by which you can cause people to drift so far away from self-determination that they can never save themselves?
Yes, a definite method, and it is so effective it never fails.
Do I understand you to claim your method is so powerful your opposition cannot reclaim those whom you have permanently ensnared through drifting?
I claim just that. Do you think I would control so many people if my opposition
Get
could
kills with
prevent
each
me?
weapon to win.
Nothing can stop me from controlling people except people themselves. Nothing can stop
Oh,
me
shit.
except the power of accurate thought. People who think accurately do not drift on any subject. They recognize the power of their own minds. Moreover, they take over that power and yield it to no person or influence.
Go ahead and tell me more of the methods by which you cause people to drift to hell with you.
Oh,
I
this
cause
gun
people
game?
to drift
Nah, we
on
ain't playing
every
this shit.
subject through which I can control independent thought and action. Take the subject of health, for example. I cause most people to eat too much food, and the wrong sort of food. This leads to indigestion and destroys the power of accurate thought. If the public schools and the churches taught children more about proper eating, they would do my cause irreparable damage. Marriage. I cause men and women to drift into marriage without plan or purpose designed to convert the relationship into harmony. Here is one of my most effective methods of converting people into the habit of drifting. I cause married people to bicker and nag one another over money matters. I cause them to quarrel over the bringing up of their children. I engage them in unpleasant controversies over their intimate relationships and in disagreements over friends and social activities. I keep them so busy finding fault with one another that they never have time to do anything else long enough to break the habit of drifting. Occupation. I teach people to become drifters by causing them to drift out of school into the first job they can find, with no definite aim or purpose except to make a living. Through this trick, I keep millions of people in fear of poverty all their lives. Through this fear, I lead them slowly but surely onward until they reach the point beyond which no individual ever has broken the drifting habit. Savings. I cause people to spend freely and to save sparingly, or not at all, until I take complete control of them through their fear of poverty. Environment. I cause people to drift into inharmonious and unpleasant environments in the home, in their places of occupation, in their relationship with relatives and acquaintances, and to remain there until I claim them through the habit of drifting. Dominating thoughts. I cause people to drift into the habit of thinking negative thoughts. This leads to negative acts and involves people in controversies and fills their minds with fears, thus paving the way for me to enter and control their minds. When I move in, I do so by appealing to people through negative thoughts, which they believe to be their own. I plant the seeds of negative thought in the minds of people through the pulpit, the newspapers, the moving pictures, the radio, and all other popular methods of appeal to the mind. I cause people to allow me to do their thinking for them, because they are too lazy and too indifferent to think for themselves.
I conclude from what you say that drifting and procrastination are the same. Is that true?
Yes, that is correct. Any habit which causes one to procrastinate, to put off reaching a definite decision, leads to the habit of drifting.
I cause people to allow me to do their thinking for them because they are too lazy and too indifferent to think for themselves. Laziness plus indifference equals procrastination equals drifting. This describes a true drifter as defined by Hill. Since I have been a true procrastinator for most of my life, this hits a little too close to home for me. I like to use the excuse that I work best under pressure, but that is all it is, an excuse for why I procrastinate. Can you think of examples in your own life when laziness and indifference led you off your path to success? When an opportunity slipped through your fingers because you were too slow to seize it in time?
Team deathmatch.
Is man the only creature who drifts?
Got enemy
Yes.
inbound. Lock and load.
All other creatures move in response to pressure. Man alone defies nature's laws and drifts with it. Everything outside the minds of men is controlled by my opposition, by laws so definite that drifting is impossible. I control the minds of men solely because of their habit of drifting, which is only another way of saying that I control the minds of men only because they neglect or refuse to control and use their own minds.
This is getting to be pretty deep stuff for a mere human being. Let us get back to the discussion of something less abstract. Please tell me how this drifting habit affects people in the everyday walks of life. And tell me in terms the average person can understand.
I would prefer to keep this interview up among the stars.
No doubt you would. That would save you from being exposed. But let us come back to Earth. Tell me now what drifting is doing to us as a nation here in the United States.
Frankly, I may as well tell you that I hate the United States as only the devil can hate.
That is interesting. What is the cause of this hatred?
The cause was born on July 4, 1776, when 56 men signed a document which destroyed my chances of controlling the nation. Had it not been for the influence of that damnable document, I would now have a dictator running the country, and I would stop this right to free speech and independent thought that is threatening my rule on Earth.
Am I to understand from what you say that nations controlled by self-appointed dictators belong in your camp?
There are no self-appointed dictators. I appoint them all. Moreover, I manipulate them and direct them in their work. Nations run by my dictators know what they want. Look what I am doing through Hitler in Germany. Look what I am doing through Stalin in Russia. My dictators run those nations for me because the people have been subdued through the habit of drifting. My dictators do know drifting. That is why they rule for me the millions of people under their control.
What would happen if Mussolini, Stalin, and Hitler turned traitors and disavowed you and your rule?
That will not happen because I have them too well trusted. I am paying each of them with the sop of his own vanity, by making him believe he is acting on his own account. That is another trick of mine.
Let us come back to the United States and learn something of what you are doing to convert people into the habit of drifting.
Right now, I am paving the way for a dictatorship by sowing the seeds of fear and uncertainty in the minds of the people.
Through whom are you carrying on your work?
Mainly through the president. I am destroying his influence with the people by causing him to drift on the question of a working agreement between employers and their employees. If I can induce him to drift for another year, he will be so thoroughly discredited, I can hand over the country to a dictator. If the president continues, I will paralyze personal freedom in the United States, just as I destroyed it in Sweden, Italy, Germany, and Italy.
In 1938, when Hill was writing this manuscript, the president was Franklin D. Roosevelt. Are the devil's comments applicable today? Do you think Hill might write the same words today as he wrote 70 years ago?
What you say leads me to the conclusion that drifting is a weakness which inevitably ends in failure, whether among individuals or nations. Is that your claim?
Drifting is the most common cause of failure in every walk of life. I can control anyone whom I can induce to form a demonstration on any subject. The reason for this is twofold. First, the drifter is just so much putty in my hands, to be molded into whatever pattern I choose. Because drifting destroys the power of individual initiative. Second, the drifter cannot get help in opposition, because the opposition is not attractive, soft, and useless.
Is that why a few people are wealthy, while the majority of people are poor?
That is exactly the reason. Poverty, like physical illness, is a contagious disease. You find it always among the drifters, never among those who know what they want and are determined to get just that. It may mean something to you when I call your attention to the fact that the non-drifters, whom I do not control, and those who possess most of the wealth of the world, happen to be the same people.
I have always understood that money was the root of all evil, that the poor and the meek would inherit heaven, while the wealthy would pass into your hands. What have you to say at that point?
Then you know how to get the material things of life, generally know how to get out of the hands of the devil as well. The ability to acquire things is contagious. Drifters acquire nothing except that which no one else wants. If more people had definite aims and stronger desires for material and spiritual riches, I would have fewer members.
The actual verse of the Bible talks about the love of money, not money itself. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10.
I assume from what you say that you do not claim fellowship with the industrial leaders. Evidently, they are not friends of yours.
Friends. I'll tell you what sort of friends of mine. They have belted the entire country with good roads, thus bringing into close communion the people of both city and country. They have converted ores into steel, with which they have built the skeletons of great skyscrapers. They have harnessed electrical power and converted it into 1,000 uses, all designed to give man time to think. They have provided through the automobile personal transportation to the humblest citizen, thus giving to everyone the freedom of travel. They have provided every home with instantaneous news of what is happening in all parts of the world through the aid of the radio.
And now television, smartphone, satellite, and internet.
They have reared libraries in every city, town, and hamlet, and have filled them with books, giving to all who read a complete outline of the most useful knowledge mankind has gathered from his experiences. They have given the humblest citizen the right to express his own opinion on any subject, at any time, anywhere, without fear of molestation. And they have seen to it that every citizen may help make his own laws, levy his own taxes, and manage his own country. These are but some of the things the industrial leaders have done to give every citizen the privilege of becoming a non-drifter. Do you think these men have helped my country?
Who are some of the present-day non-drifters over whom you have no control?
I have control over no non-drifter, present or past. I control the weak, not those who think themselves.
Go ahead and describe a typical drifter. Give your description point by point so I can recognize a drifter. See.
The first thing you will notice about a drifter is his total lack of confidence. He will be conspicuous by his lack of self-confidence. He will never accomplish anything by default. He spends all he earns and more, too, if he can get credit. He will be sick or ailing from some real or imaginary cause, and calling to high heaven if he suffers the least physical pain. He will have little or no imagination. He will lack enthusiasm and initiative to begin anything he is not forced to undertake. And he will plainly express his weakness by taking the line of least resistance whenever he can do so. He will be ill-tempered and lacking in control over his emotions. His personality will be without magnetism, and it will not attract other people. He will have opinions on everything but accurate knowledge of nothing. He may be jack of all trades, but good at none. He will neglect to cooperate with those around him, even those on whom he must depend for food and shelter. He will make the same mistake over and over again, never profit from failure. He will be narrow-minded and intolerant on all subjects, ready to crucify those who may disagree. He will expect everything of others, but be willing to give little or nothing in return. He may begin many things, but he will complete nothing. He will be loud in his condemnation of his government, but he will never tell you definitely how it can be improved. He will never reach decisions on anything if he can avoid it, and if he is forced to decide, he will reverse himself at the first opportunity. He will eat too much and exercise too little. He will take a drink of liquor if someone else will pay for it. He will gamble if he can do it on the cuff. He will criticize others who are succeeding in their chosen calling. In brief, the drifter will work harder to get out of thinking than most others work in earning a good living. He will tell a lie rather than admit his ignorance on any subject. If he works for others, he will criticize them to their backs and flatter them to their faces.
You have given me a graphic description of the drifter. Please now describe the non-drifter so that I may recognize him on sight.
The first sign of a non-drifter is this. He is always engaged in doing something definite, through some well-organized plan which is definite. He has a major goal in life toward which he is always working, and many minor goals, all of which lead toward his central scheme. The tone of his voice, the quickness of his step, the sparkle in his eyes, the quickness of his decisions clearly mark him as a person who knows exactly what he wants and is determined to get it, no matter how long it may take, or what price he must pay. If you ask him questions, he gives you direct answers and never falls back on evasions or resorts to subterfuge. He extends many favors to others, but accepts favors sparingly, or not at all. He will be found up front, whether he is playing a game or fighting a war. If he does not know the answers, he will say so, frankly. He has a good memory, never offers an alibi for his shortcomings. He never blames others for his mistakes, no matter if they deserve the blame. He used to be known as a go-getter, but in modern times he is called a go-giver. You will find him running the biggest business in town, living on the best street, driving the best automobile, and making his presence felt wherever he is. He is an inspiration to all who come. The major distinguishing feature of the monster is this. He has a mind of his own and uses it for all purposes.
Can you think of someone you know who fits this description? Is that person a non-drifter?
Is the non-drifter born with some mental, physical, or spiritual advantage not available to the drifter?
The major difference between the drifter and the non-drifter is something equally available to both. It is simply the prerogative right of each to use his own mind and take.
What brief message will you send to the typical drifter if you wish to cure him of this evil habit?
Starts this
I will admonish him to wake up and give.
Give what?
Some form of service useful to as many people as possible.
So the non-drifter is supposed to give, is he?
Yes, if he expects to get. And he must give before he gets.
Some people doubt that you exist.
I wouldn't worry about that if I were you. Those who are ready to be converted from the habit of drifting will recognize the authenticity of this interview by its soundness of counsel. The others are not worth the trouble it would take to convert them.
Why do you not try to stop me from publishing this confession I'm wringing from you?
Because that would be the surest of all ways to guarantee you will publish it. I have a better plan than trying to suppress publication of my confession. I will urge you to go ahead with the publication, then sit back and watch you suffer when some of my faithful drifters begin to make things hot for you. I will not need to deny your story. My followers will do that for me. See if they don't.
Knowing that indeed this book was not published for more than 70 years after Hill wrote these words, I am intrigued and anxious to learn what else he will reveal. There are plenty of fireworks still ahead.
Chapter 5. The confession continues. If this confession of yours stopped right here, your statement would be sound. But fortunately for millions of your victims who will gain their release because of your confession, this interview will continue until you have supplied me with the weapon by which you will eventually be restrained from domination of people through their fears and superstitions. Remember, Your Majesty, your confession has just begun. After I wring from you a description of the methods by which you control people, I will force you also to give the formula by which your control can be broken at will. It is true I shall not remain here long enough to defeat you, but the published word I leave behind me will be deathless because it will consist of truth. You fear the opposition of no individual because you know it will be short, but you do fear truth. You fear truth and nothing else, for the reason it is slowly but definitely giving human beings freedom from all manner of fear. Without the weapon of fear, you would be helpless and entirely unable to control any human being. Is that true or false?
It is true I shall not remain here long enough to defeat you, but the published word I leave behind me will be deathless because it will consist of truth. Indeed, Napoleon Hill passed away in 1970, and this work, being published in 2011, becomes deathless.
I have no alternative but to admit that what you say is true.
Now that we understand each other, let us go ahead with your confession. But before we continue, I may as well take time out to do a little boasting on my own account, now that you have had your fling at it. I will confine myself to one question, the answer to which will give me all the satisfaction I want. Is it not true that you control only the minds of those who have allowed the drifting habit to be fixed upon them?
Yes, that is true. I have already admitted this truth in a dozen or more different ways. Why do you tantalize me by repeating the question?
There is power in repetition. I'm forcing you to repeat the highlights of your confession in as many different ways as possible, so your victims may check this interview and determine its soundness by their own experiences with you. That is one of my little tricks. Do you approve of my method?
You couldn't be setting a trap for me for the purpose of doing some more boasting, could you?
I am asking the questions and you are doing the answering. Go ahead now and confess why you are powerless to stop me from forcing this confession from you. I want your confession for aid and comfort to victims of yours whom I intend to release from your control the moment they read your confession.
I am powerless to influence or control you, because you have found the secret approach to my kingdom. You know that I exist only in the minds of people who have fears. You know that I control only the drifters who neglect to use their own minds. You know that my hell is here on Earth, and not in the world that comes after death. And you know also that drifters supply all the fire I use in my hell. You know that I am a principle or form of energy which expresses the negative side of matter and energy, and that I am not a person with a forked tongue and a spiked tail. You have become my master because you have mastered all your fears.
Headquarters. Capture and defend each HQ as it comes online. Secure the area. Enemy's got the lead. Hustle up. Taken the HQ. Okay, get ready to move. UAV overhead. New HQ established. HQ active. Move to secure. We're at the HQ. Stand by. HQ contested. Friendly care package inbound. They're capturing the HQ. Go! Allied package inbound. HQ lost. Wait on station. Give it sweep. Okay, get ready to move. Get to the new HQ. Enemy personal radar in the air. Friendly sentry gun online. halfway there. Step it up. HQ secure. Almost done. Ready up. Wilson ready to roll out. Friendly VTOL on station. New HQ established. Friendly counter UAV active. Disable the HQ. Reinforcements inbound. Get ready.
Alpha 1-3 is in the AO.
New location ID.
Nice job.
HQ is online. Secure it. We're at the HQ. Stand by. Allied customs right. Get out.
Good shit. Salvo. RTB increasing. Good luck, guys.
Secure the HQ. Stay alive. Wilson destroyed. Constant reinforcements. On to the next wave. HQ shut down. Regroup.
Damn, we came back like a motherfucker.
Almost done here. Ready up. New HQ established. Friendly VTOL on station for overwatch. Allied cluster strike inbound. HQ is online. Secure it. care package inbound. Head to the new HQ. We're taking the HQ. Enemy position. Friendly kill.
We had like 102.
We're gonna be back. That's about an hour. Do a couple of things. Probably be back. Maybe after the fight.
Fears. Lastly, you know that you can release all of my earthbound victims whom you contact, and this definite knowledge is the blow with which you will deal me the greatest damage. I cannot control you because you have discovered your own mind, and you have taken charge of it. There now, Mr. Earthbound, that confession should feed your vanity to the bursting point.
That last dart was unnecessary. Knowledge of the sort I have used to master you does not contaminate itself with vulgar indulgence and vanity. Truth is the one and only thing in the world that can stand ridicule. Now let us continue with your confession. What is wrong with the principle of flattery? You use it, do you not?
Do I use it? Man alive, flattery is one of my most useful weapons.